been noticing a lot of people around talking about mental health lately, and it's a curious thing where I wonder how many of them have people around them that impress upon them the idea of having a vision, having a purpose in this world, and really seeing a clear path towards that. Hey, I'm Daniel Hartman from Community Machinery, and I want to share a little bit where I come from and what I've been up to lately as I've been setting up a workshop here in Sackville, New Brunswick. As far as my studio layout, I got my milling machine behind me here, and that's one of those things I dreamt of ever since I got to a point where I was tinkering and I realized when there was a part that wouldn't go together and things needed to be changed just a little bit, this is the kind of thing that I never had exposure to as a young kid, and it wasn't until my early 20s that I really started getting that kind of competency and learning the ins and outs as far as what could be done with a milling machine, what could be done with a lathe, where those things complement one another. And it's one of the things that I feel is really valuable for people to have a knowledge of how to make the things that would really improve their lives. So here I look at how we're going to create a supportive community as far as having intergenerational complement of life stages, specialty roles, and being on the leading edge as far as looking at our physical bodies, our need for things in order to stay dry, to keep warm, to keep fed, to stay healthy, and also our mental capacity as far as our need for deeper purpose and how that really catapults us into doing more, being of greater service. So long-term focus for me here is developing innovative projects to keep the doors open is number one thing, yet helping build machinery that allows people to be healthier, happier, have workplaces they want to go to in the morning, even if it's a workplace that's a temporary thing that helps work towards other goals. And when I think of growing up on a farm and the difference that place as far as the focus there compared to a lot of people I know who are involved in small-scale organic agriculture and wanting to leave this world better than they found it, not just from producing food, but the land, being a good neighbor, and knowing that if someone couldn't live near their farm, that there's a lot of practices to call into question there. So even thinking about things like food processing, that's creating really wholesome, nutritious food, where a lot of our diets, as far as things like high fructose corn syrup, I mean, a lot of people are realizing early onset diabetes, a lot of obesity, health challenges as far as a limited amount of physical activity. And I know I'll be the first one to admit that I wish I was more active in my daily life, and I realize diet is a huge part of that. So I feel like the most important contributions I can make here are making the changes so that when I'm outside of this place, I'm making better choices that keep me going on an upward trajectory and enjoying my life, and have that same thing for others so I feel more inspired. Long term, I really want to create a residential mentorship program here so people can get immersed in a model where, whether it's on a regional scale or this thing goes national or international, that there's a cross-pollination as far as people that are passionate about coming together to build things that aren't being done already. And I guess I can say a lot of things right now since I'm the only one that's going to be on the hook at the moment as far as putting my foot in my mouth. Guys like me don't get a lot of exposure to worldviews beyond, a small town growing up, and really a lot of times I stayed closed off because I realized if I started getting out there that I wasn't going to be acceptable to the people that I had really grown close to most of my life. So I know one neighbor I learned so much from during my angsty teen years would work all week in the steel mill as an industrial mechanic, and we both have the same trade now, yet it's interesting where I think he'd come home, he'd be tinkering on his motorcycles, I'd show up on my bicycle, and I'd just take him whatever I could, and would learn a lot of really cool things about all these different British bikes or German stuff, and how the Japanese, all these different schools of thought, and being able to see different design elements, and getting to take different things from all those different worldviews. That was a lot of exposure to the outside world, which is great, and I'll never forget that. Yet there's a question in my mind: how would it have been different if no one had introduced this neighbor of mine to alcohol as a crutch, as far as it was always there? And I know growing up, there wasn't necessarily that thing planted in my mind as far as what does it look like to be an alcoholic. There would be that rule, like no drinking before noon, but I feel like it's more than that, where people, when they use that to manage their feelings, it's a real challenge, as far as there's some deeper experiences we can get into when we don't have that to take the edge off. And we could argue that alcohol or things like mushrooms, they can take the edge off as far as people getting past some of their defenses, yet there's also something to be said for those experiences to be guided and really intentional, and really temporary things to see part of ourselves, and then to be more fully present without all those things acting on our physiology, to really try seeing what it's like to feel those same things, look at the same life challenges without those chemicals in our bodies. And what happens? Do we end up crying? Do we break down, or do we start nervously laughing to mask something that we need to look at? I know I don't claim to have all the answers, yet there's all the answers I've needed to find came to me, at that seemingly, sometimes at the last moment. And now, practicing that part, the answers they come a lot sooner and a lot easier. And like anything, it's just been a practice of meeting with the people that have really gone as far as they've needed to explore and learn. So, as a young adult, I think back to all the nights I'd cry myself to sleep, worried about dying alone, and that would be one moment, and the next moment I'd end up thinking about what it would be like to kill myself, and I could never outwardly admit those things because none of the people around me had ever really deeply, consciously resolved those things within themselves. So there was never people disclosing that stuff to make it safe to really talk about those things, because I always left an opening as far as like, oh, we can't look at that because it's going to remind me of all the shortcomings, all the things I haven't experienced, all the things that I don't know how to provide. And say a big part of the experience here, especially for something like a residential immersion program where people can come, it's really the opportunity to meet people where they're at and to be multidimensional beings, where it's not just about building machines or being a better person. It's about seeing how resilient we are, seeing that we have what we need, and that we really have what it takes to move through whatever challenges are right before us, and to really recognize what we're living here, what our mission, what our purpose is, and to have a community to draw on. And what else can I say other than that? I know when I'm doing this blogging, sometimes it's nice to bring in a little something. It's like show and tell in school days, and who knows, maybe this video would have been better if I had if I've been holding this ratchet all along. And this is one of these things that I'll talk more about in an upcoming, a little animated thing I'm working on. It's gonna be really, I think it's gonna be really cool. And this is a star of this animated part. But this is a snap-on. This is an S710 made in Canada. And for those of you who are really into snap-on tools, I didn't realize this till maybe 4 or 5 years ago. There's communities dedicated to, you can go look up these serial numbers and date code this stuff, and some people will know off the top of their head with me mentioning that number, where this came from, and probably tell more about this than I did. But the thing that's really important to this, where sure it's an inanimate object, it's just some piece of steel, someday it'll end up in a scrap bin somewhere. This stuff doesn't last forever, but it's made with as much quality as you could really hope for in a tool like this. And it's something that I really learned a lot about quality from. It was actually a gift. It was given to me by my dad when I was probably around 8 years old, and got some bugs flying around in here. And I didn't have any sockets for it at the time, or really I didn't have a use for a ratchet this big, and it was just one of those things that it was in my toolbox for a long time, but it was always so shiny, and it was always one of those things that I knew I was going to have a purpose for someday. And I don't use it that much because I'd more use a pneumatic impact gun, which I'll feature that in an upcoming show and tell someday. But gotta say, things like this, like the way a good tool fits in my hand, and just purely the aesthetic value, and being curious about the people who made it and what they went through, and think about them in lab jackets, like a lab coat, doing the quality control. It's one of those things that I really always had a deep, profound respect for people working with their hands. And I think it's a challenge where a lot of times, people talk about, a lot of times the money that people can make in the trades, it's also, I know for a long time I would feel inferior or blue collar as far as I'd want to flirt with girls, and a lot of the ones I was attracted to happened to be in university, and me feeling not good enough, not unworthy. And that part can still totally come up for me. But the more I can watch that, and the more I can see the purpose, as far as there wouldn't be the advancements in wisdom that there are without a lot of the physical supports that people need to be really mindful of in order to create, in order to support two worlds, and feel like the people that come from this shop, this community machinery environment, they're really able to have a foot in both worlds, as far as having more than just a fundamental foundation of knowing machines, but recognizing their own inner value, deep purpose, and connecting to a community of people that don't just go their own separate ways at the end of the day. They know what they're passionate about, and just geek out sharing about machines over a meal. And I'm excited to see where this comes to. I want to invite you to like the Facebook page, keep up to date, subscribe on YouTube if that's where you're finding these videos, and if you're around the area, feel free to drop in. There's going to be lots of open houses and things coming up. I'm going to have a spring swap meet, there's going to be a fall swap meet, and we're going to be able to buy and sell some tools, have a little show and tell, put some things on display, what's going on in the shop, and people can come and bring their old tools. We can have a forklift here, so it's got, what is it, like 7,000 pound capacity, so if someone's got a properly created or rigged load, it can get exchanged from one person to another, just like, not quite like that, but we're working towards it. If there's anything that you have in terms of support, right now I'm doing all this just out of my own pocket. I've been writing some grants, looking at what opportunities, seeing who I can partner with. If you have any suggestions out there, please be in touch. It's easy to find www.communitymachinery.com on the internet, and if you go there, there's a contact page. That contact page is, all those things are seen by me. If you comment on our Facebook page, definitely always make an effort to reply to every single person that comments, and please comment on the YouTube channel as well, as far as that really helps with engagement. And I also love knowing what's going on in people's lives and what they want to see, and video ideas, definitely. As far as, we just had this milling machine all torn down the other week. That would have made a cool video. Part of it's, yeah, just getting that inspiration, getting revved up. So the more I know what people want to see, and I know I got this, you can't see it right now, but there's a TOS SN50B lathe here. It's 20 by 80, it's pretty decent size. It was one of those machines, I knew exactly what I wanted when I went looking for it. So it's going to be coming apart, going to adjust some things. I don't know, I think there's something going on with the clutch, and anyhow, hopefully get to document some of that, because I don't think there's any TOS videos. There's lots of videos on Bridgeport milling machines, everyone's got them. But as far as TOS stuff, so this might be a real good opportunity, looking for people to help out on social media, and if there's anything you feel like you have to offer that will be helpful, I'd love to be able to partner up. Anyhow, got a frog in my throat. I'm going to sign off at this point. Thanks so much for watching. All the best.